Hello and welcome to There's No Business Like, a podcast where friends and industry colleagues explore topics and interview leaders in our industry of professional theatrical touring.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to There's No Business Like. I'm Katie Traska-Miller with Michigan Maven Creative Associates, and I am here with my friends Josh
Benson coming to you from Marion, Illinois.
And Danielle.
Hi, it's Danielle Van Hook from the Alden in McLean, Virginia.
And Brian.
Hey, it's Brian Zelmer from Bardavon Presents in Poughkeepsie, New York.
So, friends, we are going to have a quick discussion today about an old chestnut, but something we haven't really dug into that deeply here on the podcast, which is audience behavior. So there been a few reports in the news recently about, more conflicts between Broadway performers and audience members, either talking out loud, cell phone disruptions. That's pretty par for the course at this point in time. And then there's also been some renewed conversation around audience dress code as well. And what are expectations around audience dress code at going to a live performance? So wanted to bring that forward today, open it up for discussion. So first of all, my first question is, how do you deal with audience behavior, cell phone interruptions, that sort of thing? I was recently at a performance of A Raisin in the Sun, which is a community theater performance, literally a two-person scene, one of the most dramatic moments of the entire show. A cell phone alarm went off for 5 minutes straight, and nobody did anything about it. The performers...
That's wild.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, the performers barreled through. I, as an audience member, I could not believe what was happening. The performers did not flinch. They did not miss a beat. They performed the scene to the utmost of their ability. It was beautiful. But as an audience member, after, like 30 seconds, a minute, you're like, oh, someone's scrambling through their bag. They're trying to find their phone, da, da, da. But after that, it really did become distracting.
They were probably embarrassed to acknowledge it was them, and they just ignored it like, oh, it's not me.
The problem is that they were already sleeping and they slept through their alarm.
But was nobody else with them either? Right. I mean,
well, they were probably dying like, oh my God, I don't know them.
But also the number of times I've been like, oh, hey, Mom, that's you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So, Katie, at our theater, we have signs to show expectations like no, blah, blah, blah. A lot of times we'll ask the artist, because these days there's times where artists don't want any kind of phone out at all. And then there's also ones that encourage it. So we always like to find out ahead of time. And I do curtain speeches at like 99% of the shows. And so I'll incorporate that. Especially if it's a do not use your phone. So I'll usually say something, and I'll try to make it lighthearted but serious. Like, hey, just, little note here that there's no photography or video allowed. So make sure you keep your phone away. We all want to have a great time. Let's pretend, sometimes I'll say something like, let's pretend it's the 1980s and have fun like we used to. Or I'll even just joke and say, hey, if you need a reminder, my security is there and we'll be happy to do it, but let's just all have a good time and keep them away. And, and then I'll even ask, is that cool? Everybody good? And they'll say, yeah. So, and when I do those talks, it always works. It's ironic though, because I recently had a stand-up comic that was a rental and they would not let me go out to do that. And they were very adamant. They didn't want phones out. And I was like, well, the best way to do it is for me to go out and say that. And because if we don't, yes, we're going to be catching people instead of giving them the heads up. So, and sure enough, that's what happens. So in those cases, our ushers are trained to look for that and to quickly acknowledge, be like, hey, put the phone away. They'll give them a warning, just like, hey, put the phone away. And if they don't listen, we have like one of those machine claws that go down and we grab them out of the audience.
Wouldn't that be something?
No, we have an escalation policy.
My approach in the curtain speech is just a little bit different. I throw in the slightest bit of humor that's really just a stupid joke of, make sure that your phones and pagers are off. And if you've got a pager, welcome to the modern era, get rid of that. But then what I encourage them to do, I say, don't just turn your phone to silent. This is all about live entertainment, experiencing something together as a communal experience. And to experience that, you need to be present. So take your phone, turn it off. If you're going to use it to take pictures, if they're able to take pictures during the event, if you're going to use it to take pictures, put it on airplane mode so that you are not disturbed and taken out of the moment that we're in by what's coming up on your phone. And, take the time to experience this communally together. And that, making them think about their phone in a different way causes them to interact with it, as opposed to just the standard, hey, silence your cell phones. People hear that and they just move on.
Yeah, I do think those much more pointed, interactive, humor based approaches are a lot more effective because they're really looking at a person making that ask of them versus just the general announcement or something in the program or a sign on the door. I will say though, like, as much as we complain about this, and obviously I just experienced it myself and it does happen. I was also just at a performance of the Lion King in Grand Rapids this past weekend, and that's 2,500 people or 3,000 people in the auditorium, not a single cell phone, and the audience was incredibly respectful and incredibly engaged. So it's a real crapshoot, and they just did a standard pre-show audio announcement.
That you saw though, Katie, because even at Broadway shows, people do it, and then you see the ushers again. They'll flag them with their flashlight or whatever they do, and there's an escalation policy. I'm sure just similar to ours too.
Yeah.
Or if it doesn't end, then we escalate it to eventually where they may even get kicked out. But we try to avoid that.
Yeah, and I do think a lot of this is how we set it up, and when we tell people there are things that they can't do, I think it's also important to tell them what it is that they can do. And I see the noise issue kind of differently in a youth and family audience, and kind of differently depending on the show or even what the audience is. And I've started making sure with the artists ahead of time, but nearly all of them in the youth and family space, I say this is a no hush performance. And so I'll say, like, you don't need to shush your kids. Like, this isn't a time where they really kind of have to be on their best behavior. Kids a lot of times need to react, and they need to say the thing they just saw out loud, or they need to like ask a question and process it out loud, or they need to do something with their bodies. And I think it's important for people who go to family theater, because it's good theater and it's an hour long and it's like a great thing, to also have the expectation that like the kids around them are going to be loud, or you might have an 8-year-old, but the people next to you have 5-year-olds, and the 8-year-old's just going to behave differently probably. But I also think that it's important, for people of all abilities, right? If they don't need to feel self-conscious about any sounds that, they might be able to make, it's nice to sort of give everyone that wiggle room of the amount of sound they're allowed to make. And I'll give examples, and I'll say, like, you can make a quiet remark, or, if you see something you like, you can cheer for the performers. And especially in the kind of theater and shows I'm doing, that's really important. But then I'll also say, like, if you need a minute, you can go out in the lobby and you can walk around. And, the ushers will be kind of happy to let you back in. And so, like, for me, that's helped a lot with like feeling like people are like family shows, adults are trying to teach their kids how to act in the theater in this very strict way, and ways that like we require in like classical music or like in other art forms, but especially where they are, it's not what they need to do. And it's like about making this a place that's fun and comfortable.
I love that, Danielle, especially for the family programming. I think that's great. I may have to steal that, but I think what it comes down to is we're all just saying it's helpful to set expectations together. And when we get a chance to do that, it's great. And it's frustrating when they're like, oh no, we absolutely no video or anything. And, the artist management is saying that, and then they don't let you go out there and set those expectations. That's when it's like, all right, this is going to be a tough one, because people are definitely going to take out their phones. It's just the culture we live in today.
So along that with setting expectations, let's talk for a second about our responsibility as, presenters, venue managers, to like do the teaching of the etiquette. I think there's been a lot of discussion around, as we open things up and we make it more accessible, we're trying to recruit new audiences into our spaces. There's a little bit of like a classist, I feel like, discussion around like, well, some people just don't know how to act at the theater, right? Or like, they're going to come and they're going to be loud and they're going to bother me, the patron that's been coming for 25 years. And I understand how to act in this space, right? There's a lot of sort of dialogue, I think, within our industry professionals, as well as audience members around this. So what is our responsibility, and do we even have one, to teach quote unquote teach our audience members how to behave. And I think we can talk again about youth and family audiences, Danielle, a little bit separately, but let's talk about adults first. What do we have any sort of responsibility, or how do you do that in a way that makes the experience the best for everyone, regardless of their level of experience or how many times they've come to your venue in the past?
While continuing to get them juiced up, right?
Well, like there's some behavior that is just, that's people don't know, people don't understand, they haven't had that experience, and that's fine. And then there's like really rude behavior, they get overserved in your venue and they're drunk, right? And they're being loud and obnoxious. Like there's two different sort of
100%
sets of behavior that we could talk about, right?
I think just generally one thing I've seen more of in the post-pandemic culture is more people like acting as not necessarily trying to be rude or anything else. It's just like they're just unaware of how they're disturbing the people around them. They're talking like they're on their living room couch with their people, and I've seen that more than anything else. And it's just a matter of letting them know, hey, we can all hear you, like, and then they're like, oh, and they realize, oh yeah, we're not just home and isolated, but we're affecting other people.
Let's look at Broadway as an example. Broadway is trying to broaden its scope and appeal to more people, and to not be, by bringing in celebrities and bringing in shows that are based on pop culture, they're trying to bring in a new, younger audience that is not used to going to the theater. And I think you have to have an expectation that you're going to have things like this happen because you're bringing in an audience that is green. And so for me, I think that you're creating the problems that you're calling problems, because the solution to continuing to make money on Broadway is to bring in new audiences. And they're being successful at that, which is wonderful. And they are taking the right steps to be successful at that. But there are growing pains along with that. And I think that taking it in stride is part of that. And I also think that, the dress code is actively changing. If you look, say, 60 years ago, Broadway was almost a black tie event. You look now and it's not. And part of that is bringing in the new audience.
I think the idea now, like for my own personal taste, is you should just be comfortable. People ask, how should I dress? I'm like, dress comfortably. And if it's something that's going to be more formal, I'll definitely share that with them so they're not embarrassed when they show up in jeans and everyone else is not like that. But they're welcome however they are comfortable. And that's how I feel about dress code. And if I have expectations like our gala, which is not quite a black tie event, but there are expectations for a more elevated dress, we'll make sure that's in the invitation and the communication is clear about that. But other than that, I purposely wear jeans and a lot of times just sweat. I look very casual even when I'm working, because I just want people to feel comfortable that they're there. And I'm the executive director and I'm dressed like that. They're welcome there. Like they could see that they're welcome however they show up.
And that's part of my approach with the jeans t-shirt with the jacket and tennis shoes, is that I am more approachable as the person on stage welcoming them into the room. And in turn, the space is more approachable.
I agree with that. And I think a way too that we can sort of signal what's appropriate without necessarily saying it is, and, prefacing with just like fashion and just has changed so much since then. And there's just such a wider variety of styles, and like what is a more dressed up style. Like there's just a wider variety of that. And, I see when people come to the show, like they want a picture. They want to find something that's cute that they can get, their family around, or, that they're going to take a selfie with. And a lot of times it's great if it's like a poster from the show. But I think the more sort of like curated selfie locations, without necessarily like saying that, but like setting up some kind of a thing that you can, decorate at different points of the year that looks elevated. And now, nobody wants to like not have their cute outfit on in the gram. You might not have people in their black ties or whatever that equivalent is today, their Ann Taylor loft suit, but like it's the equivalent of what is dressy and nice today. But at the same time, with what Brian has said, like we want people to be comfortable and we want them in the space.
Well, like Josh's point about Broadway before, I think it's important. I'm focusing on access and inviting people that are traditionally underserved in our community. And so like a lot of those people have financial, they're not there because of financial reasons. And I don't want them to feel like it's a barrier for coming to our theater because they don't have money for dressy clothes. Like I want them to come and I want them to experience the art and be comfortable and know that they're welcome and just as welcome as everybody else.
So then how do we address sort of I will say, quote unquote, old school way of thinking about this for patrons that have been coming to, say, an orchestra performance or your Broadway series or whatever for a long time that do have expectations sort of set? How do we message to them that what they're seeing around them, the changes they're seeing around them, while might also be uncomfortable for them, is sort of the way that it's going? Do we put messaging in our program? Do we put it on screens as we enter? Do we have a pre-show announcement, Brian, where we talk about inclusivity and welcoming and that sort of, like, how do you message that? I've seen it done, etiquette guides in programs in a very humorous way about, how do you enter and exit a row? How do you dress? How do you unwrap a candy quietly? Like in a very humorous way to sort of put people at ease and help them understand what the rules of the road are. But I find I get more pushback from patrons who have been around for a long time, who are sort of set in their ways and are very offended when you bring a child into the space, or, someone comes in wearing jeans and a nice polo or a button up and they're not in a fancy suit. Like, how do we work with those patrons to make the experience good for them as well as everyone that we're trying to bring in?
I think the first step is to tell that Karen to shut the hell up.
100%. Obviously not literally, but yeah, basically it's like mind your own business.
And the way that I've responded multiple times is, yes, I understand we've got a lot of new patrons in the building. And that just happens some of the time, but we do understand your frustration. We hope you still enjoyed the show. That's it.
I'm more coded about it. I'll be like, yes, you're right, and I'm glad you're dressed up. You look great. And I'll focus it on them and talk about how they look great and make them feel good without acknowledging that the other people are wrong, because I don't think they're wrong. Like they can we want them to show up how they want to show up. So, if the people have a problem with that, that's fine. Like you mentioned, they're older. Eventually, those people are becoming less and less. And
eventually they'll die is what Brian said.
I was trying to not say that, but yeah, basically, I mean, that's why they're becoming less and less in our theater. And, the important thing isn't about the dress. And when it is, again, when there's a special event, we'll say it's black tie in the invitation or whatever, we'll make sure that's clearly communicated, but that's so rare. Most of the time, even for the opera or anything else, people are showing up in jeans and that's fine. Show up how you are comfortable. That's all I care about. I don't care what the Karen thinks, how you should be dressed. They want to dress up. That's great. You look great. They have a complaint about it. I'll say, great. Thank you for being a good example. These are people that are new to our theater. Maybe they'll see your example and start dressing up now, and again, I'll just focus it on them and compliment them on how they're dressed without tearing down the other person.
And like, not to be a raging feminist about it, but I feel like, Katie, like you're asking that question, like rises up in a level of importance because like, I'm going to say that people have an easier time complaining, to a woman, and pushing back, I mean, I've seen it happen where it's like a conversation happens with like a female employee and then a male employee comes out and says the same thing. And they're like, oh, okay, cool. And so like, that might be something that you've just experienced on a greater scale, and which like is neither here nor there. But I just think is one of those things that is like always coded in all of these discussions, right?
I will say that like in our theater, like my male employees will have the same type of pushback. And then whenever I come up wearing a jacket, they listen and don't push back anymore because they see an authority figure walk up, even though I'm just, some punk in a jacket with a t-shirt on. But they view it as an authority and then stop pushing. Now, granted, there may be an inherent sexist bias with not acknowledging a female as an authority built into that somewhere as well, because it happens with my female staff as well. But I'm saying it also happens with my male staff, and they get questioned and pushed back on until I walk up.
I mean, it's Again, it's about class, it's about perception, it's about age, you know, like there's a lot of stuff baked into that for certain.
Because people tell me all kinds of stuff without reading my name tag that, like, I'm pretty sure they wouldn't say to somebody who looked older. Maybe it was taller.
On the other side of the coin, though, I also we do a lot of educational programming, and we have some schools that when they come, they actually encourage their kids. It's not messaging from us, it's from the school. They encourage them to dress up, to dress something nicer when they show up. And it becomes more of a special experience. And there is that to it too. Like, oh, this is something special, so we're going to wear special clothes. We're going to do something different than our norm. And so I can see that side of it. But again, my focus right now is more on access. So that's why I'm not worried about what people are wearing.
Well, and in prepping for this, Katie Traska Miller presented us with an article from People magazine that talks about dress code for theater, and an etiquette expert weighs in on that. And to me, an article like that is the worst possible thing that we can have for accessibility of theater and for people's concept of theater, because that article specifically talks about, no, it is this space that you have to revere, that you have to that is elevated, and your dress should be elevated for it. And I think it's all a bunch of crap. I think that we as arts professionals are focused on the art being there for everyone. However you show up is how you show up. Just come, just be here, experience it, be part of the community.
Yeah, that article I sent you guys back in August of 2025 when it first came out, and I was really sort of peeved about it for the reasons Josh just expressed, and went back and pulled it up again because we were gonna, you know, chat more about it today. And I don't know, I'm still peeved about it. I would say, because like People magazine in particular, I think in particular because it's in People, it has such a broad reach, and I feel like it's a little bit irresponsible. And like, I wanted to write to this reporter about like, do you realize the impact that putting this out there will have on the arts industry? Like journalism and arts, and they're very closely related, right? In terms of like being able to convey information and bring people together, and we're a lot in the same boat. And when it comes to funding, and so it's just like, I don't know, that just felt very. I was upset about it. And a few of the things that this etiquette expert says, like, while she says an official enforced dress code isn't necessary, she believes that venues should, quote unquote, strongly suggest one. I was like, where do you get off, lady? You are not an arts professional. You do not understand what we are trying to achieve, what you're trying to do. It's
classism. It's dividing. I think there's some cases with, I'm very against like these etiquette experts, because a lot of times they're steeped in racism and colonialism ideas. And so like, I don't give them, the thought that they, you know, to elevate them even into my thoughts. But I will also share that I didn't even realize People magazine still existed. So while they were extremely important to steering cultural norms and things in their day, I don't think they have anywhere near the power they used to, or influence.
I suppose that's true, but it just sort of got my back up a little bit, and it made me think about this experience. Like I just mentioned, I just took Leo to see The Lion King again this past weekend. About a year ago, we went and saw it in a different venue in Kalamazoo. And my parents were so excited to take us. And before we got in the car to drive there, I picked him up from school. We ran home and I said, okay, put on these jeans and put on this sweater, right? And I wanted to get him dressed before he got in the car, and drove 2.5 hours to go see this show. And he was insistent he was going to wear these camo pants that he had on and this t-shirt. And I fought that fight for like a good 15 minutes before I finally threw him in the car. And then when we got to Kalamazoo, I was able to change in the restaurant and go to the theater and da-da-da. And everything was fine. But on that drive, I'm sitting there going like, why am I having this battle with my 7-year-old? It does not matter to him. It's not going to matter to the other families around him. Who am I trying to impress? What am I trying to teach him about this experience? What expectations am I trying to set for him? Is it about me as a parent not wanting to be embarrassed by somebody else giving me the side eye when my child walks in quote unquote underdressed for this experience. Like I had a real sort of existential crisis around this on this drive. I guess my point is, for all of the work that we have done and all the work that I've done in accessibility and trying to break down these barriers and these walls,
it's still so ingrained.
It is still so ingrained to want to set a certain level of expectation, particularly I think around dress for going to the theater, around dress code. But on the other hand, during school matinees, Brian, same thing. I get up on the stage, talk to the kids before a school matinee performance, and in encouraging them to also, like, this is basically how the speech would go. Hi, welcome. How many of you have ever been to the Midland Center for the Arts before? They raise their hands. How many of you have never been to a live performing arts event before? They raise their hands. And inevitably, it's always 50% of the kids and parents who had never been to the space. So then we have like a little tiny rules lesson or etiquette lesson where it's like, I'm so glad you're here. Now, just a few things you need to know. First of all, this isn't a movie or TV, right? So the performers are right here in front of you. So while they love for you to shout and clap, there's sometimes where you're going to need to be quiet, right? And then we talk about keeping our hands to ourselves and our feet off the seats. And if you need to talk to the adult that you're with or a friend, make sure you do it quietly. If you need to use the bathroom, make sure you take an adult with you, right? So we're sort of level setting and setting some expectations and rules while also encouraging them to have as much fun and as much interaction as possible. So like, why can't I do that with my own child? Like, take him to the theater. I'm constantly shushing him because I'm worried about the other people around me, because we've had that experience. Sit in the way back row. You know, we've set ourselves up for success, and there's still people that turn around and glare at you when he makes the smallest noise. So like, this stuff is so deeply ingrained.
I know, but when it comes to noise, though, that's where it depends on the show. Like if it's a family show, like Danielle was talking about before, hey, that's what you need to expect because that's who's in the audience. But there are times where it's a quote unquote more adult show or targeted for adults, and it might be something quiet or whatever. And like for someone who has attention issues and neurodivergence issues, any little noise can completely take you out of the story constantly. And if it's like one time, it's not a big deal. But when it's over and over and over, and it's like, okay, you really should be aware. And like, you know, that person, the parent, whoever, when I was a parent, I had kids, if they were being distracting, I know, yes, I want them to have that experience, but I know that I am distracting more people. I'm going to remove them for a few minutes, maybe go in the lobby, maybe they need to use a bathroom or get a drink, whatever, and then try to bring them back in. But I don't want to disturb everybody if it's that situation where it should be letting everyone have that attention. So it's kind of a balance, because yes, you want your kid to have that experience, but I also don't want to have, you know, be taking 20 other people like their attention away from what they want, what they came and paid for and want to be able to experience. So it's like my experience isn't greater than theirs and vice versa. So I don't know. I get aggravated. I'm one of those people, like I don't usually shush someone right away, but like after 2 or 3 times, if it's still going on, there's nothing happening, I will give the look, or I'll even be like, shh, you know, I'll try not to do it rudely, but like make them aware, hey, you're taking me out of the show. And you know, especially I have particular hard, like easily distracted, and it's really hard for me to get into shows as it is. And once I'm in it, I'm taken out so quickly. So I don't know. For me, that's not black and white for me.
And that's a fair point, Brian, about people's ability to get into a show, pay attention, like all of those things. So then again, it goes back to setting expectations and sort of level setting for everybody in the audience. Like ultimately it's about respect, and it's about like making sure that you and everyone around you can enjoy the experience in an equal way, but in a way that works for them. Like
you said that much better than I just did.
It's actually a really complicated interpersonal sort of dynamic that, as Josh said before, it's ever evolving, but I think is still worth of some deep thought as presenters and as venue operators, because it's going to continue to evolve.
I know we need to wrap, but I just will interject that I've had tons more experiences with old people, old quote unquote people distracting the show. And yes, candy wrappers is a large part of that, but talking and other issues than I've ever had with children. And I'll just share a quick story. When we brought my daughter to see Swan Lake at Lincoln Center when she was about 3 years old. Maybe it was even younger. Maybe she was about to be 3. And I remember I purposely bought tickets in the back on the aisle, the very last row, so that way we could quickly get out if she started to act up. And as soon as we sat down, these 2 older ladies that were sitting in front of us were like gleaming at us. One of them lectured my wife about bringing such a young child, that they're going to ruin the show. She was a perfect angel. Like, she was basically could have been one of the other seats. You wouldn't have even known she was in the audience, and was just like amazing. And we were so proud that she sat through the whole thing. And these 2 ladies during the show, there were times they were talking and rustling candy wrappers and everything else. And it felt so good to shush them and give them the dirty eye that they gave my 3-year-old daughter and wife before the show even started. So anyway, it's not always children. Like, we focus on children, but it's not always children.
All right, friends, I think that's all we have time for today. Thank you for joining us once again here on the show. Thanks, Josh, Brian, Danielle, for having this chat with me. And I hope you'll join us here next time on There's No Business Like.
All right, everyone. Thanks for listening to There's No Business Like. Our producers and hosts are Brian Zelmer, Josh Benson, Kevin Maynard, Katie Miller, and me, Danielle Van Hook. Views expressed in this podcast are ours alone and are not reflective of the organizations we are a part of. Keep up with us at nobusinesslike.com. There you'll find links to all of our episodes and socials. If you like this podcast, give us a like, a follow, a review, or our favorite, a 5-star rating. Oh wait, what was that site? I got it, don't worry. It is nobusinesslike.com. Do I sound out bus-I-ness every time I type it? Yep, sure do. Stay in touch, my friends.
Before we start, you all need to sing the blues. Dun, 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 dun. Go ahead, Jeff. Dun, 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 dun. No? You never saw Adventures in Babysitting?
Oh, yeah. I love that movie.
No one leaves until they sing the blues.
I've never seen that movie.
One of my favorite parts of the movie.
Wait,
That is a great movie. After you get
There are
off
things
work,
in it that did not age well.
Really? I haven't watched it in years, but I loved that movie.
Yeah. Most movies from the 80s have not aged that well.
So just keep in mind it's from the 80s, but you need to watch that movie.
You do.
It's a great movie.
Audience is sort of getting out of hand. Hold on.
I heard his ears.
Just like this.
Also, question. When did it become okay to just like bring dogs into the store?
Oh my God, it drives me. That when I was at the Rialto, that was one of the worst.
I saw I petted the cutest dog, but I was like, why is this dog in like a TJ Maxx?
Oh my God, it's gotten out of
I
hand.
had the doors closed and somehow they got the doors open. So now
your puppy's fine. We love Gus.
I know, but he makes noise and then I have dog noises. So, okay.
My dog's actually bothering my feet right now, so we'll see if he behaves.
Bow, bow, bow.